The Timberwolves draft Isaiah Evans with the third pick of the second round. How Evans fits the team and why he could be a plug-and-play rotation guy immediately. Next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of the daily Locked On Wolves show. And the draft is over. The Timberwolves still came away with two players in the draft. They came into it with two picks. They ended up with two players that they drafted, and it appears as though they are keeping. I want to talk today about Isaiah Evans. We're going to start the show there and why I like Isaiah Evans a lot. Somebody I talked about on the show, I think both Monday and Tuesday of this week, as a potential target for Minnesota, first at 28, and then also when he wasn't picked in the first round, a target at 33. That is who they drafted. I'll make the case for why he could be pretty plug and play right now in the back part of the Timberwolves rotation. But I think there's a real shot, and I know Chris Finch doesn't play a lot of rookies, but I think he could be ready for, the ninth man role kind of right out the gate for Minnesota. I want to talk a little bit about their late second round pick, number 59 overall. They drafted Trey Kaufman-Renn out of Purdue. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. And I'm also going to give you right here at the top a quick minute on a rumor. Like literally as I was hitting record, I had to stop and catch up with the news that was breaking. No official, nothing's happened yet, but a lot of LaMelo Ball rumors. And I'm going to start here with just a quick thing. I don't even have it on the graphic if you're on YouTube because this literally just happened. But Mark Stein of the Steinline reporting the Timberwolves and the Raptors are two teams that are aggressively pursuing LaMelo Ball from Charlotte. And Shams Charania of ESPN saying there are multiple teams. He didn't name any names, at least as of right now. He hasn't named any names of teams that are interested in LaMelo Ball. Not a surprise at all. I mean, I can pull up my document from the trade deadline, and I talked about LaMelo Ball as kind of a pie-in-the-sky option for Minnesota at the deadline because I thought that from an offensive standpoint, LaMelo Ball would be a fantastic fit with the Timberwolves. I really believe that. I'm not going to get super in the weeds on it right now. We'll save that. I'd be shocked if something happened. I've been shocked before, but I'd be shocked if something happened in the next 24 hours. We'll talk about it on Friday's show. I'm sure we'll cover it on the squad show tomorrow. But in short, I love the fit for Minnesota, especially if they can find a way to edit the Julius Randle trade, which is not official yet because of some of the mechanics of the deal. They're reporting these draft picks, as going to 28, going to Brooklyn and 33 to Minnesota, but it's not official until I think the second, like July 6th or something. So the deal could still be changed. And there's a way that LaMelo Ball could end up in Minnesota as part of that deal. And if that happens, awesome. If it ends up being a Rudy Gobert trade, I'm going to have to think a little bit more about it. I worry a lot about having LaMelo Ball in the Wolves and not having Rudy Gobert in the Wolves, what that means for the Wolves defense. You're obviously relying a lot on Yohan Beringer in that instance. Already it looks like the Wolves probably will as a rotation guy based on how things have gone so far this offseason. So in short, I love the fit. As always, it depends on what you're giving up. If you're giving up Rudy Gobert, it's a bit more tenuous because you're going from a top 10 defense to definitely not if you're trading Rudy for LaMelo Ball. If you're keeping Rudy and you're simply trading Randle and some other assets and you're bringing in LaMelo Ball, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. That would be fantastic. So more to come on that later in the week. There's also a Kevin O'Connor tweet out there about the Wolves are in some other big names with eyeball emojis. There was some Jaylen Brown chatter specific to the Wolves during the day on Wednesday leading into the second round. There's also the Kawhi Leonard chatter has increased, not necessarily directly related to Minnesota, but a lot could happen here in the next several days. And so that's something obviously we'll keep an eye on. But the here and now is Isaiah Evans. And I want to spend a good chunk of today's show first on Evans, the prospect, and then also the fit for Isaiah Evans with Minnesota. The short summary of Isaiah Evans, it's pretty easy. He's a shooter. He's a wing. He's 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, turns 21, I think in December. So he's 20 and a half right now. 2 years at Duke, shot 38% across 2 seasons, was 41.5% as a freshman, was just a little over 36% this year, but he finished in a bit of a slump and was shooting much closer to 40% for most of the season. He's a great shooter. The mechanics are good. The footwork is good. The balance is good. The release is pretty quick. It just feels like he's going to be even better as a shooter at the NBA level. There's some guys you could just kind of, it feels like that's the case. I don't think, and the range, like he's got great range. The further 3-point line isn't going to bother Isaiah Evans, I don't think at all. He's a very good movement shooter in the half court, and Minnesota really hasn't had a true movement shooter since Malik Beasley. I mean, Dante, the Wolves will run some sets for Dante DiVincenzo, but like Dante was just as comfortable pulling in transition as he is, probably even more so than coming off his screens and shooting. Whereas Isaiah Evans, like that's what he's all about. The length is real, and the half court feel as a shooter is real. If you watch any clips, any film of him in the half court, he knows how to get to his spots. He knows how to get his shot off, and he can shoot from anywhere. That is just straight up what he is. And don't let the 38% career percentage fool you. Obviously, that would be fine. It'd be great if he shot that in the NBA. I think he will. I think that's honestly probably the floor. I think he shoots better than 38% as a rookie in the NBA from outside the arc. Don't let the like, and also don't get caught up in the frame. The like he looks. I've seen a couple of Brandon Ingram comps out there. He's not Brandon Ingram. I don't think he's going to be that good from the mid range. I think he's just straight up going to be a better 3-point shooter than Ingram. He's going to be more of a role player. Now, Brandon Ingram's only made, I think, 2 All-Star teams, so it's not like he's like a super duper star. I talked about this a little bit the other day on the show. His body type looks like Brandon Ingram, but he's not going to have the mid-range game of Brandon Ingram. He's not going to get to the rim even as much as Brandon Ingram, who doesn't actually do it all that much at this point. But the shooting is better, and I think he's got a real chance to be a microwave scorer off the bench, in pretty short order at the NBA level. Now, I don't think the Wolves are going to give him that level of minutes right away, but I could see him in a Bones-ish sort of role where, like, depending on the night, he's playing, 8 minutes. If he's hot, if he's got it, he's going to play 18, 19, 20 minutes. That's the type of player he is, and he adds that movement shooting element the Wolves simply don't have right now, especially with the DiVincenzo injury. That's and even more so than DiVincenzo. I'm not saying he's straight up a better shooter than Dante, but I think more comfortable in those half-court sets where he's coming off of pin downs and catching and shooting. That's an element the Wolves don't have, and especially without DiVincenzo. Like, that's not Ayo's game. I would assume he's a good 3-point shooter. That's not how I would assume is a straight somebody drives and kicks and he catches and shoots, or he shoots it in transition. He's not a movement shooter. That's not a primary skill set for him. In terms of the defensive end of the floor, Isaiah, actually, one last thing on the offensive end. He's not a playmaker for himself or for others. He's not going to do much off the dribble. He's gotten a little better at attacking closeouts. I think there's something there, and obviously that's kind of the next step. I mean, think about Jaden McDaniels as a rookie in the NBA. Even his first 2 years, he was not comfortable attacking closeouts. He would, like, I always talk about, like, rookie year Jaden would catch the ball. He'd kind of pump fake. He'd take one dribble, and then he'd shoot like a really difficult 20-footer, just a contested long 2. Then it progressed into just quickly catching and shooting, and there was no attempt to drive. And then now we're in a spot where Jaden can read the defense. Last couple of years we have been, and he often makes the right decision about whether to attack, to drive and kick, to catch and shoot, whatever. But he's attacking closeouts much more comfortably. I think Isaiah Evans can get to that point based on his skill set, his frame, his size, his length, all of that. But he's not going to generate offense for other people. He's not going to distribute the basketball for others. That's not his game. Next, I want to talk about Isaiah Evans on the defensive end of the floor very quickly. And then also what I think, just kind of a quick look at the Timberwolves rotation right now, is he's straight filling the DiVincenzo role, given there's actually not that many guys under contract. We'll talk about what it looks like right now. And then we'll talk about Trey Kaufman-Renn, who is the Timberwolves' second round pick, and whether or not he has a shot at actually cracking the rotation this year as somebody who has a little bit more experience in college and could also be a bit of a plug-and-play player at the NBA level. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. And I think the Timberwolves have the right person in Tim Conley. Just wait till the dust settles at the end of this offseason. We don't know what's going to happen next from Tim Conley. One of the best moves the Timberwolves made was first Mark Lowry and Alex Enriquez taking over, and then convincing Glenn Taylor, when Glenn was still the majority owner, to bring in Tim Connelly to make a massive offer to pry him away from the Denver Nuggets. And then also Tim Connelly maintaining some continuity and decided to keep on Chris Finch, who was actually hired by the previous regime, but it would have been easy for the new president of basketball operations to simply move on and get his own coach. Instead, Tim Connelly decided to stay the course and keep Chris Finch on the staff. If you're looking to hire, which, like Portland just hired Mike Inori, the former Timberwolves lead assistant under Chris Finch, spend less time searching, more time actually reviewing candidates who check all your boxes, less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Hims. ED is way more common than most guys think, and millions of men deal with it at some point. Hims offers a simple, convenient way to take care of your health by connecting you with licensed healthcare providers online and giving you access to personalized treatment options from the comfort of home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process designed to make getting care easier. Taking care of yourself should not feel complicated, and Hims makes the process private and easy to navigate. It's healthcare built around your schedule and your comfort. When something's already uncomfortable to talk about, the last thing you want is a complicated process. Having the ability to start online from home makes taking that first step feel that much more manageable. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/LockedOnNBA. That's hims.com/LockedOnNBA for your free online visit. hims.com/LockedOnNBA. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. Reminder about the Everydayer Club. You can sign up at lockedonwolves.supercast.com. You'll get ad-free episodes of Locked On Wolves, all the audio episodes ad-free. That includes the squad show that we do Tuesday and Thursday, and of course, all the regular Locked On Wolves episodes. You also get access to the Discord chat where they're talking Timberwolves all the time. Again, sign up at lockedonwolves.supercast.com. All right, Isaiah Evans defensively, I think a fair way to describe him would be a work in progress. He's not very good on the ball. Again, good length, 6'9" wingspan. I think that there is some upside there defensively, and he just seems like the sort of guy who, given how hard he plays, I do think the effort level is there. He just needs a little bit of NBA coaching on the defensive end of the floor. He's not a fantastic athlete. He's fine. He's a good, obviously a good athlete. He's good off the ball. And I saw a couple scouting reports that said he was sometimes inattentive off the ball. Not a massive surprise for a guy who was in the role he was in at Duke. And there was some, I think it was Matt Lloyd, the Timberwolves GM, that was talking after the second round to the media, and he made a comment about how they think there's some defensive upside there for him. So there's not a whole lot there yet, but with some NBA coaching, some experience, and again, he's got the profile to be okay on that end of the floor. I think it may take a minute. And also freshman year to sophomore year, he improved pretty significantly defensively. And, I think that bodes well for what he'll end up being. And by the way, Isaiah Evans is somebody who was mocked relatively frequently to Minnesota at 28. Matt Lloyd, Timberwolves GM, did say that the Wolves were looking at him as a possibility at 28 before they traded back. So the Wolves have had their eye on him. They reportedly really like his personality. That was floating out there. They like him, the fit, ultimately what the fit will be in their locker room with Isaiah Evans. He was the only guy that was invited to the draft by the NBA to sit in the green room for the first round that did not get drafted. And so there is going to be a chip on the shoulder. He's a first round talent. Pretty much everybody that I saw, draft analysts, had a first round grade on him. I think the fit is fantastic. And I do think, as we start talking about the rotation, he's pretty plug and play. Like sitting here right now, given the Timberwolves roster, The starting lineup is probably Anthony Edwards, Ayo Dosunmu, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. Those 5 guys all under contract, assuming the Ayo extension, is finalized and happens, or the re-signing of Ayo happens. That's your starting 5. Obviously, DiVincenzo's out. The only bench guys that are actually under contract right now are TJ Shannon, Juwan Beranger, Julian Phillips, Rocco Zakarski's on the 2-way deal. And then you look at obviously Isaiah Evans, and then the second round pick, Kaufman-Renn, who we'll talk about. Jalen Clark's a restricted free agent. Bones Highland, Mike Conley are unrestricted free agents. Let's say for a moment, let's just say that Bones Highland gets re-signed. I think that second unit right now is TJ Shannon, Bones Highland, and Isaiah Evans, and then Juwan Beranger. And, they need to add a piece or two. There's going to be something added in free agency, so that, it remains to be seen depending on who that is, what position that is. And looking at the roster right now, it needs to be a big, unless they somehow, they're not going to rely on Kaufman-Renn to be their 4th big necessarily. But right now, Beranger is their 3rd big. And so if you look at the backcourt, there's a real shot that Evans basically slots into what the Dante role was 2 years ago in year 1 in Minnesota for DiVincenzo when Conley was in the starting lineup. Like, you're the 7th man. You're the guy that's coming in and scoring off the bench. There's also a chance they don't bring back Bones Highland. I think they probably will. But if they don't, that role could be Isaiah Evans. And they're not going to ask him to be a primary point of attack defender. They're not going to ask him to run the show offensively. They're going to say, and they already talked, Chris Finch talked at length after the season about TJ Shannon needs the ball in his hands, assuming he's still on the roster as well, and he's not traded in one of these other moves, which obviously shakes everything up if the Wolves made a big trade. But TJ could operate with the ball in his hands. Obviously you stagger your rotation, and Ant operates the ball in his hands with the second unit, and Isaiah Evans playing off the ball. So there's a lot there. Something I forgot to mention about Evans is he ran some inverted pick and rolls with Cam Boozer at Duke, where he was the beneficiary of Boozer. He would set the screen for Boozer and then would pop and would be the beneficiary of Boozer kicking the ball back to the perimeter. That's something that, it's a little different at the NBA level, but we could see some of that with Evans screening for Ant, Evans screening for Ayo. I think that could be pretty interesting. Evans screening for Naz Reid, for that matter. So there's something there too, where the Wolves could get a little bit creative with how they use him in the half court. So definitely something to keep an eye on when it comes to the Timberwolves rotation. And of course, again, we're talking about a team that, if you include this year's draft picks who haven't officially been signed yet, so if we include them, we're talking about a team that has, I think, 10 guys under contract. That doesn't include Rocco on the 2-way deal. They've got to figure out the last 4 or 5 spots on the roster. And they've obviously got the cap space now to do it. They've got the mid-level exception at their disposal. So, something we'll be talking about a lot here in the coming days and weeks. All right. Trey Kaufman-Renn, the Timberwolves stood pat at number 59. I was mildly surprised they didn't trade out of the second round entirely and pick up a future asset. But, lots of teams were trying to do that. They did it, I think, last year. But instead they stood pat and they drafted Trey Kaufman-Renn out of Purdue at number 59, the second to last pick in the draft, which I didn't look at the Wolves draft history, but it's probably been since Kevin McHale that the Wolves took a Big Ten, 4-year college guy. Like, remember when they drafted, was it Marcus Taylor from Michigan State? And there was, it wasn't always Big Ten. There was the guard Blake something, and they drafted Lauren Woods from Arizona one year in the second round. Like, there's a bunch of second round, like 4-year college guys that Kevin McHale would always draft. This guy is that. Kaufman-Renn was a 4-year guy at Purdue, 6'9" with a wingspan of almost 6'11". It's like 6'10" and a half. He is a power forward, just like almost a traditional power forward. He's not a phenomenal athlete. He doesn't have phenomenal range. He's certainly not a stretch four. He can, he has shots and threes, but that's relatively low volume. We'll get into that a little bit. But his calling card is he's a good screen setter. He's really good in the short roll, both as a passer, and he's got like a nice push shot floater that he shoots from 10, 12 feet. That's really good. He's got great footwork in the paint if he ends up with the ball in the post, or again on the short roll as well. He's got kind of a knack for passing the basketball. So it's almost like a cross between an old school physical rebound. He's also a good rebounder, an old school physical rebounding power forward, and the modern day center. He's not as big as like, your typical roll big, but who sets a screen and rolls to the rim. he's not a super athlete, but because of his feel and his size and his physicality, he is pretty good in the short roll. So I want to dig in on that just a little bit, talk about what potentially a future in the rotation could look like for Trey Kaufman-Renn. And then we'll put a bow on this thing here today. We'll look ahead at the rest of the week. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Gametime. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. And that's why so many fans are turning to Gametime. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to the events that you want without the usual hassle. Look, my biggest pet peeve is when you think you get a great deal and then you go a couple steps further in the process and all of a sudden the final price looks completely different than what you thought it was. Gametime takes the guesswork out. You know the price up front. The other thing I really like is the view from the seats. I won't go to an event if I don't have a good sense for what I can see from my seat. So you can see that on Gametime too. It's huge. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event, not just sports, but every type of event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. All right, Trey Kaufman-Renn. I mentioned already, I think he's the best way to describe him in my mind is like, think of the power forwards from 20 years ago, not massive, but 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", bruising power forwards that aren't a stretch four, that set good screens, that rebound, and then added a little bit of passing, a little bit of dynamism, I'll say, in the short roll. Again, not super athletic, but knows what to do with the basketball in those situations, and he could take a dribble or two and score at the rim. He's got really good touch and feel around the rim. He's got that push shot, that floater I mentioned, and he's great at kicking to the corners in the short roll. The assist rate is really great for him too, and it increased every year. I mean, it went up from just under 17% as a junior to over 17% as a senior. And his last 2 years, he played like he wasn't playing with Zach Edey. There was some good two-man stuff early in his career with Zach Edey. He was a starter since his sophomore year. The scoring jumped after Edey graduated and went on to play for the Grizzlies. 2 years ago, as a junior, Trey Kaufman-Renn averaged 20 plus a game. He averaged 20.1 points, 6.5 rebounds a game. The scoring went down a little. The shots weren't as much for him in the Purdue offense. So he averaged only 14 points a game. But again, the assist rate went up. The rebound rate went up significantly, up to over 18.5%, jumped almost 5.5% from junior to senior year. And the defensive rebound rate jumped over 8%, which is huge. So all those numbers trending in the right direction. He just didn't have as much usage within the Purdue offense because of how they played and the personnel they had in his senior year. But he's not going to be a scorer in the NBA anyway, right? I think he is pretty plug and play as far as you just want a big guy to go out there and set good screens and rebound and all that stuff. Defensively, I think because of the relative lack of athleticism, I'm a little dubious about what all he can do right away. Matt Floyd talked about after the draft about they think he could have some positional flexibility. They could play him at the 3 on the defensive side of the floor. Talking about positional flexibility. Again, I think some of the modest athleticism could be an issue there, but the length and the feel is real. And if he can guard 3s and 4s, I don't think he's ever going to move laterally enough to feel comfortable switching him into small 3s and, certainly not 2s. I don't know that he's big enough to stay in front of or quick enough to stay in front of some of the bigger, quicker 5s. That to me is the one aspect, and that's the reason why he was there at the end of the second round, is I don't know that the lack of explosion, the lack of suddenness could hurt you both as a role big on offense as well as your positional flexibility, your switchability defensively. So that would be my hesitation with Trey Kaufman-Renn. But again, he was the second to last pick in the draft for a reason. And I do think, given his experience, he played 4 years at Purdue, and his size and the rebound and all the stuff I talked about initially with him, he could go out there and give you 5 good minutes. I think there's more upside for a guy like him than some of the other bigs the Wolves have had in similar type roles. Like remember Jesse Edwards last year. He was on a two-way 2 years ago. He was in the summer league. Like he was a true center, but it just the field didn't quite look like it was there. The fluidity wasn't there. Even like Luka Garza is obviously a much better offensive player than Trey Kaufman-Renn, much more well-rounded offensively, but he's pretty limited in like what he could do. And I think the upside as an NBA player, these aren't really like fair comps. I'm just thinking of other bigs the Wolves have had like as a fifth or sixth big. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think, has more, I'll use the word flexibility again. I think he can do more things right away. And there's a little more upside there to see him as like hey, could he be a 14-minute a game guy that puts up, 7 and 7 or something and like is a legit rotation guy. I think that's possible. But if nothing else, he's a nice depth big with a little bit of upside on the defensive, really on both ends of the floor. So if you're going to draft a guy and keep him and put him on the roster at 59, you can do a lot worse. And Matt Lloyd mentioned, seeing him in summer league and getting him into the building and seeing what they have. Cause I mean, here's the thing, like they really don't know what they have with these guys until they get their hands on them. And he mentioned really liking Kaufman-Renn, the interviews and all that stuff with him as well as with Isaiah Evans. So obviously that's a big piece of it for these teams as well. And for the Timberwolves front office specifically. All right. So next up today, we've got the squad show. And I don't know, like we already had an agenda. We knew what we were going to talk about. And with the LaMelo Ball stuff I mentioned off the top, who knows? We'll probably talk some LaMelo because how could we not? We'll speculate in some other big names. We're certainly going to talk about the draft. We'll talk about the last squad show was Tuesday. So prior to the Wolves, I guess they didn't draft anybody Tuesday. So that would have been post Randle trade. So we'll talk about Isaiah Evans. I'm sure we'll talk Trey Kaufman-Renn a little bit as a group. Myself, Jack Borman, Sam Ekstrom, and former Gopher Parker Fox. We're going to talk about all of the above. We'll speculate, talk about what's next in the offseason. We'll talk about free agents if the Wolves end up using their cap space or using either way, they should use their mid-level. But if they don't make a big trade, what they do with the space that they have. We might talk some Jaylen Brown. I don't know. I think we're going to cover a lot of stuff. So that's today. That's live, 11:30 Central. We're going to go live. I'll be on the show today. And then, of course, I'll be back for our regular show on Friday. I'm sure in the next 24 hours, we're going to see some more rumors. We'll talk about all that on the show Friday as well. And if anything crazy happens over the weekend, you better believe there's going to be a bonus episode. Perhaps I'll have Jack Borman on early next week to speculate as we get closer to free agency, which starts in like a week. It's all happening. The next couple weeks are going to be crazy. And then we're into summer league very quickly. So a lot going on here at Locked On Wolves due to just like the busiest time of the offseason. So we'll get into all that stuff. And really my plan with free agencies, I want to run down like everybody that's available. We'll break down like, hey, the Wolves have the $15 million mid-level exception. Given the IO contract, they'll be a little bit limited on what else they can do. Pretty much vet minimums plus the mid-level. So let's break down number of roster spots, positions of need, and then also the guys that could be available. And again, that's a good show to probably have, Jack on to talk through. And I'm sure we'll have slightly different visions of team building, but and then also there's obviously the big trade target. So both those things are going to be talked about quite a bit in the next few days, but depending on what happens the next 24 hours, I was going to do free agency Friday, but we may have to talk about the mechanics of a potential LaMelo trade or a Kawhi trade or a Jaylen Brown trade. We may do that on Friday's show too. So keep it locked here to Locked On Wolves. And don't forget about the live squad show on YouTube today at 11:30. If you can't watch it live, you'll be able to get the audio right here on this feed. And again, I'll be on the show with Jack, with Sam, and Parker Fox. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder also about the Everydayer Club. You can subscribe at lockedonwolves.supercast.com. You get ad-free episodes of all the audio episodes of Locked On Wolves, plus access to the Discord channel. We're in there talking Timberwolves every single day. Again, lockedonwolves.supercast.com. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.